Chapter 96. In the end, nothing happened. The two policemen had no intention to speak to the Daoyuan form teacher because of this small matter, and the Daoyuan class standing in the country was something everyone was aware of. Lu Shu happily left for school. His luck with getting into the Daoyuan class with a Tier F aptitude not only let him observe any happenings, but also provided a form of protection. Reaching school and seeing Jiang Shui, Lu Shu had a sudden thought, can the exchange between me and Jiang Shui still continue? Lu Shu pondered for half a day and decided it was no longer possible. Previously, he sold Jiang Shui because he needed money but not anymore. Logically speaking, after he had taken 240k, he would not be lacking money anymore. Even though both parties kept it a secret, if the exchange was to continue, would Jiang Shui's family start to have suspicions? It would definitely spell trouble for Lu Shu if Jiang Shui's family suspected him. Although Jiang Shui was a good person, what about his family? On the night of the exchange, Jiang Shui spoke with a calm, firm voice and anyone could tell he was a kind person. As for the reason to reject future exchanges, he could say he needed them for his training. He told Jiang Shui that he sold those two magical stones because he could still get them in the future and thus will not affect his training. But the issue was that in the future, he could not just treat the magical stones as decorations. Hopefully, there would be a black market for trained and natural metahumans. Where there's light there's darkness. Lu Shu felt that despite the Heavenly Network's strict authority, the dark side of the metahumans was bound to appear. That would be interesting. What surprised Lu Shu was that Shifei suddenly announced a day break for Daoyuan class and for everyone to self-train at home. And the school side suddenly notified a night class. Luocheng International School never had night classes for a long time, which made everyone uncomfortable. The school's teachers would really grab any opportunity. As soon as the Daoyuan class announced the break, they resumed the night classes. In reality, the Luocheng International teachers and principal were quite desperate. Although having the Daoyuan class set up in the school might seem prestigious, this wasn't the case. It was a happy occasion at the beginning as it suggested that the officials valued the school highly, but after a while, they realized that the two education systems had an awkward connection. The school principal was desperate. What is going to happen to the enrollment rate? In the end, our school's results will plummet. To convince the teachers that without night classes, the students would go home and revise was as impossible as convincing them that ghosts exist. The thought of this made the principal anxious. As an attempt at atonement, Lu Shu went home and made Lu Xiaoyu fried tomato eggs. To stay in school with the rest of the students for night classes was impossible. This not only applied to him but the rest of the Daoyuan class students as well. Everyone hurried home to continue their training. At this point in time, all the Tier B aptitude students had already completed one large cycle, and the mysterious matter chapter of the Yin-Yang kinship of the three was reaching the end. Seeing that the Daoyuan class was going to impart the next step of training method, the Tier C, D, E, and F aptitude students were becoming anxious. During the training of the mysterious matter chapter, the difference was still not obvious, but now that others were going to start on the next chapter while you're still at the first, this was troubling. If it was a race, you have not finished your first round while others had already begun on their second. Most students in the Daoyuan class came from a rich family and the limited amount of magical locations were all monopolized by them. Lu Shu felt that the Heavenly Network was extremely smart to tell the students about locations rich in magical energy, which saved them from having to provide such locations which would be harder to manage. The world was all about survival of the fittest and one could only blame himself for not having the money to buy such locations. Lu Xiaoyu was delighted from a mouth of the fried eggs and Lu Shu was relieved. In the middle of the meal, Lu Shu suddenly experienced a loud thunder inside his head as he felt two strong powers crossing paths nearby. Their position was constantly changing as if they were heading from north to south. After entering the second nebula, Lu Shu had become more receptive to power waves, and these waves were so sudden that Lu Shu thought, could this be related to why Daoyuan class suddenly had a day break? Lu Shu was about to leave to check out the waves he felt when Lu Xiaoyu clung to him. I felt it too. You need to bring me along, I promise I won't be a burden. Lu Shu frowned. Lu Xiaoyu was already a Class E, and to defeat someone like Lu Li with one fist was not an issue. It's just a look anyways, and Lu Xiaoyu has to face this chaotic world herself one day. After all, an incubated flower would not survive long. This was Lu Shu's view in life. Having been through countless tough times, he never felt a need to fully protect Lu Xiaoyu and to give her a worry-free life. Doing so would not be beneficial to her. It was through his own experiences that he lived so practically. The both of them cautiously jumped across the roofs in the night time, and one benefit about rushing on the roofs was that no surveillance camera would catch them. Who would even install surveillance on the roof? It was at this moment when Lu Shu noticed that Lu Xiaoyu's speed wasn't too different from his and got a better idea about her potential. This young lady has gotten stronger. At that point in time, there seemed to be a commotion developing in the south. Huge bright lights lit up the entire Wangcheng Bridge, spanning across the Luo River, which was one of the main junction connecting the new district and the old district where Lu Shu lived. Lu Shu led Lu Xiaoyu up a tall building and stared in that direction, only to be shocked at the sight of 7 black coats, Shi Fei included, chasing after 3 men who were escaping towards the north for their lives. In a split second, the man in the front suddenly turned around and struck his palm towards the ground. Upon the impact, spikes appeared from the ground of the bridge which headed towards Shi Fei and the rest. Lu Shu was shocked. Aren't those people the same ones which someone mentioned of the Golden Foundation forums? What are the 3 metahumans who robbed the Azhou Bank doing in Luocheng? But Shi Fei and the rest had great teamwork and were well versed in battle as they managed to dodge aside from the earth spikes. One of the black coats struck the spike back at the man in front but was kicked aside by a muscular-looking man beside him. During this lightning speed exchange, a yellow talisman from within that black coat's hand flew towards the other party, and upon contact, there was an explosion. But, besides a few scratches and slightly burnt marks, the man did not suffer any significant damage. This man had speed and a strong defense which made Lu Shu take a deep breath. Is this the power of a Class D strength type? No wonder he could escape from Azhou. Chapter 97. From the incident regarding the metahumans of Azhou, it could be seen that although policemen with modern weapons could hurt metahumans, they did not have a good understanding of metahumans. If the other 2 elemental metahumans were Class E, Lu Shu could understand. After all, elemental metahumans started from Class E. But what was with this Class D strength-based metahuman? Lu Shu was more familiar with strength-based metahumans, and could safely conclude that he had just passed Class E, and was on the track of a Class D, but he was only considered as a weaker Class D. Perhaps only when he fills up his second nebula would he reach the peak of Class D. So Lu Shu knew from the moment this criminal made his move, that Lu Shu couldn't do what he could do. His speed was faster, and it seemed like this strength-based metahuman had reached Class D, but not for a very long time. There was something unusual about this. For the other party to raise himself up to such a level, he would need to awaken 3 times. In the past, Lu Shu thought that it would be difficult to awaken so many times, but right in front of him was such a person. This guy must have been through a lot. D-class metahumans already had the ability and speed to evade high-tech weapons. In last night's chase, this strength-based metahuman had hurt people even after being warned. Furthermore, the police stood no chance against him in the dark as they struggled to even take aim, sacrificing 3 men in the process. And during the course of the event, the black coats were shocked that the criminal did not take much damage from the explosion caused by their talisman. The truth was from last night till now, they were only exhibiting their true abilities now as it wasn't much of a battle last night. The black coat who was sprawled on the floor coughed out some blood before stabilizing himself. The remaining 6 black coats took advantage of the explosion and whipped out 6 more talismans with crimson-red words. The 3 criminals tried their best to evade their attacks, but these 6 talismans were thrown in all directions as if they were locking down onto the criminals. The best they could do was to minimize the damage. Under the dark sky, 3 consecutive explosions echoed. They evaded 3 of the talismans but were struck by the other 3. The talismans stuck onto them, and in a moment, the red words on the yellow paper glowed with a bright red light before erupting with a huge explosion. The black coats, perhaps with the knowledge that the explosion did not do much damage to the D-class strength-type metahuman, decided to focus on the other 2 metahumans. The strength-type metahuman did not have a single talisman on him. On the other hand, his 2 accomplices had already been damaged heavily by the talismans. The criminals were reeling in shock. They did not think that for such a small city, Luocheng would have so much personnel from the Heavenly Network. Apart from the numbers, the personnel here were also much stronger than those in Azhou yesterday. The 7 black coats surrounded the criminals together, with them silently acknowledging Shi Fei as the leader. Don't fight heedlessly, they must have reinforcements soon. Continue heading north, once we bypass the Yellow River and towards the northwest, there'll be hope. The guy next to the burly metahuman said, evidently holding in his pain. Just as he finished, the 3 of them turned and bolted. The black coats gave chase immediately, and at that instant, the 3 criminals turned around all of a sudden. The one who could manipulate the ground sent his palm towards the ground once again. Just when everyone assumed that he was trying to escape, the air felt dense and heavy as if they were underwater. Everyone's movements slowed down, and only then did the black coats understand that they were trapped by the opponent. There was much pressure in the air, and that could be seen from the expressions on some of the black coats. A simple chase had turned into a fight put up by the 3 metahumans in cold blood. All this seemed to have been planned and rehearsed by the 3 of them for a long time. They had waited so long just to try out this combination tonight. Earth spikes impaled 2 of the black coats' chests, while the rest also suffered different degrees of injuries. Fresh blood flowed onto the earth through the earth spikes. At this juncture, Wangcheng Bridge looked like a living hell. It was not that Shi Fei and his men were weak, it was just that these 3 people were too familiar with each other and their moves. And just as Lu Shu had predicted, even in the Heavenly Network, Class D metahumans were not extremely common. All the students in Daoyuan class were at the level of Class F. If there was a Class D amongst the black coats here, they wouldn't have come to such a state. Lu Shu noticed Shi Fei's leg was injured, perhaps a fracture. Given the way Daoyuan class practitioners were training, they would see a great improvement in future. As of now, however, they would struggle against bigger and stronger metahumans. Witnessing such a scene made Lu Shu turn pale. This was truly the first time Lu Shu witnessed something that could hint at what the future had in store. Were people really willing to be controlled by the Daoyuan classes? Did metahumans really want to return to being normal people? When their strength reaches a certain level, perhaps there would be more chaos. Also, there was a very obvious problem. If most people were jolted by an event into awakening, where did that jolt come from? There must be something which was very detrimental to them. Would they be dissatisfied towards this society? Would they resent their surroundings and the people around them? Or the existence of metahumans was wrong right from the start? Lu Shu didn't want to continue thinking. He did not cover Lu Xiaoyu's eyes either. If this was the cost of the impending new era, everyone would be exposed to this sort of sight sooner or later. There was no avoiding the reality. At this moment, police sirens reverberated around the area. A few black coats were dashing towards the scene at the other side of Wangcheng Bridge. The 2 men in front were, by far, ahead of the other people. Their expressions were sour and each of them held a long sword, exuding a bright green light. They must be the highly skilled Class D men of the Heavenly Network. What they brought with them must be the meta-weapons which were mentioned by Shi Fei before. The reason for Daoyuan class day off today was to allow personnel of the Heavenly Network to be deployed at strategic locations everywhere. What was thought to be a flawless plan turned out in such tragedy. What was thought to be 3 Class E metahumans turned out to be 1D and 2E, which was a huge difference. To be honest, They did not expect to have a metahuman consecutively awaken 3 times to reach Class D in such a short amount of time. Chapter 98. The 3 fugitives realized that they were about to be surrounded. The strength-type metahuman proceeded to carry his 2 partners and continued to escape north. A police car approached from the front, but the strength-type metahuman seemed to have no intention of stopping. As the 2 parties were about to collide, this man leaped into the air and easily passed the car from above. This was the prowess of strength types, their physiques were too overpowering. Just how incredible were the physical abilities of a Class D strength type? If he wishes to escape, not even the police or the Class D experts from the Heavenly Network could match his speed. He wasn't invincible, but just stronger in this aspect. At Class C, could a man's speed be faster than a flying sword? In that class, even a bullet would not match the speed of a flying sword. Lu Shu thought for a moment and told Lu Xiaoyu, "Go home and wait for my call." He ordered firmly, and Lu Xiaoyu was able to access the gravity of the situation and obediently leaped from roof to roof back home. Lu Shu made Lu Xiaoyu leave as he wanted to follow them, not because he wanted to fight with the strength type but because he wished to see what other techniques the Heavenly Network experts had in store. Also, he wanted the soul of this Class D metahuman. It wasn't for himself but in preparation for Lu Xiaoyu. He had no plans to intercept amidst the chaos, as doing so would be problematic. Given Lu Shu's careful nature, he definitely wouldn't do something so stupid. But having the knowledge of where this man died meant that he could bring Lu Xiaoyu over after the chaos. And by that time, Lu Xiaoyu would have gained enormous combat power equivalent to that of a Class D expert. This metahuman was violent by nature. He had harmed countless innocents yesterday, and in today's escape, he had sent multiple passers-by flying. Being knocked down by him would be worse than being knocked down by a train. So absorbing that man's soul would not affect Lu Shu's conscience. He could not believe that the Heavenly Network was going to let the 3-man escape. If their escape was really successful, then the scenario that the Heavenly Network painstakingly built would become a joke. Even a Class D could toy with them, and this would reflect badly on the Heavenly Network's combat power. The Heavenly Kings were strong, but how few of them were there? Lu Shu suspected that the Heavenly Kings were similar to Li Xianyi, who started their training ever since the era with scarce magical energy, and the other practitioners probably only started training after the recovery of magical energy. As the period of time since the recovery was still relatively short, there would be a huge gap between the real experts and the rest. Even Class CS were scarce. Whether this was the case could be determined from the fight later that night. He dared to follow them because of 2 reasons. One was that everyone's attention was on the 3 fugitives. Both the police and the Heavenly Network had their hands full on them and would not notice him. The second reason was that Lu Shu was of a different caliber now. If even a Class D strength type could wreak havoc all over the city, then Lu Shu would be able to too. At that point in time, Lu Shu had just achieved Class D and his power may not be too far off compared to this strength type. He also had his corpse dog. Neither the strength-type metahuman of that Heavenly Network Class DS would expect a Tier F aptitude Daoyuan class student like him to possess such powers. Furthermore, under the cover of his celestial cloak, it would be hard to recognize him, and thus, Lu Shu was confident in keep himself away from trouble and to be able to retreat tactically if needed. Without this confidence to be able to retreat, Lu Shu would not have chosen to follow them. Lu Shu also realized the benefits of Li Xianyi's training from the basics. He had a better understanding and control of his own strength, which also explained his confidence. Asking Lu Xiaoyu to go back wasn't because of her strength, but because Lu Xiaoyu had not broken through the second nebula, which meant that without the celestial cloak, her face would be easily recognizable. It would spell trouble if their identities were exposed. Lu Shu continued his advance along the roofs as there was no surveillance. The dark night and the shadows from the street lights provided extra protection. The lights could light up the roads, but if someone were to look up past the street lights to look at something, it would be too difficult. Basically, the lights were blocking their visions. Everyone was heading north. Tall buildings weren't much of an obstacle for Lu Shu, and there weren't many tall buildings to the north of the Wangcheng Bridge to begin with. The tallest building was a 4 stories tall furniture warehouse, and to say that he was like walking on flat ground wasn't an exaggeration. Everyone was sprinting at top speed with the fugitives in the lead and Lu Shu following closely behind, then followed by the Heavenly Network people. Judging from this, Lu Shu must have one of the best physical capabilities among all of the people there. Luocheng was a small city and the strength-type metahuman was about to reach the Longhai overpass and further north was just mountains. Once within the mountains, given strength-type physical capabilities, it would be impossible to track him down again. But Lu Shu doubted that it would so simple. At this moment, loud bangs from an automatic rifle could be heard from a nearby rooftop as the bullets hit the soil, causing a veil of dust and small potholes. It wasn't missed on purpose, but that metahuman was too fast and even the snipers could not do anything to him. This was the advantage of having speed. A concentrated gunfire could be heard through the night sky, which sounded like the roar of a wild beast. Lu Shu noticed, from afar, a man donned in an army uniform and immediately jumped off the building. Given that the sniper was set up on a rooftop, staying there would be hard to stay undetected. Lu Shu hid in the shadows of the buildings and observed the situation. That metahuman was forced to hide within one of the buildings to prevent any stray bullet from hitting him. Even a Class D metahuman had to beware of the destructive capabilities of modern weapons. He could still dodge the scattered bullets of the police, but under this concentrated firepower, how could he hide? Chapter 99. Although he had high resistance, he would die from being hit by a bullet. And now, with the existence of modern weapons, no metahuman below Class C could take on such weapons. Which was why Lu Shu felt that these 3 criminals were dumb for continuing to fight even though they did cause much damage previously. Even if you want to be unruly, at least wait till you are Class C. Luocheng was adequately prepared towards dealing with these 3 metahumans, adequate enough to surprise Lu Shu. 2 Class D men from the Heavenly Network leading their own teams, and 14 Class ES responsible for the traffic to and fro the south. Additionally, there were numerous policemen supporting the entire operation. They must have classified this issue as one of extremely high priority. As for the 2 black coats on the bridge, Lu Shu thought of an explanation as well. Even though the Heavenly Network was adequately prepared, deploying their men early on, they did not have awakened metahumans to train with them for battle experience. Take Liang Che's treatment as an example. After giving him a tranquilizer, they brought him back and did not have to put up much of a fight. With such good control of situations, the people of the Heavenly Network never had much experience with battle, which meant they would make mistakes when they really had to fight. This was extremely normal. What if highly experienced team popped up to control awakened metahumans as well as practitioners right at the dawn of the era of rich magical energy? Who would have trained with this team? There was a saying when units faced a battle in reality, only after weathering a series of battles and hardships would seasoned veterans surface. But the world was still peaceful now. Perhaps there were also highly skilled veterans employed by the Heavenly Network. But compared to their entire organization, there was only a very small number of such individuals. Lu Shu didn't guess wrong. The seasoned warriors who really went through battles had already been subject to employment from different organizations. Everyone understood the value of all these experienced men. At this juncture, the personnel from the Heavenly Network had caught up. Lu Shu tried to conceal himself more, preparing to use his celestial cloak as an escape technique. That strength-based metahuman was carrying his 2 comrades, hiding behind some walls in fear and not even revealing his head in fear of snipers. One shot could take his life. But he couldn't sit idly either. If he was surrounded by the impending practitioners, it would be impossible for him to escape. It was imperative to know that there were 2 Class D practitioners in that group. At that instant, this metahuman made an important decision. He exposed the heads of his 2 comrades, using them as a shield to protect himself as he bolted towards the southwest, as there were many infrastructures there and he could sneak and escape if he made it there. His two accomplices were in shock and anger. Never did they think that their friend, who earlier swore to go through thick and thin together, would betray them while they were still alive. Their shouts and curses echoed through the night, just like wailing hungry wolves awaiting impending death. Everyone was stunned. Even those people who were chasing after these metahumans. They had never faced such a cold-blooded person. This metahuman. What was he like before awakening? A murderer? A habitual offender? This scene reminded people of the brutal murderers in news reports, extremely cold-blooded and heartless. Lu Shu was in even more shock. This guy was heading towards Lu Shu's hiding spot. Damn it! Lu Shu frantically retreated, but having only taken a few steps, that metahuman had already bashed into this small alley. By now, one of his comrades had already lost his life while the other was struggling for his life, panting and bleeding profusely. Just when Lu Shu could not be more shocked, that metahuman brutally snapped the neck of his comrade who was still alive seconds ago. Did he do this to prevent his comrade from taking revenge in future? Lu Shu suddenly realized that he had underestimated the brutality and possibilities of this evolving world. The impending violence and chaos left Lu Shu extremely unsettled. If only those people in online forums who argued that the metahumans caused no harm saw this scene. Their perspective would probably take a 180-degree turn immediately. Gaining supernatural abilities within a short span of time, who knew what would happen? Lu Shu continued to retreat along the alley. He did not want to get embroiled in this mess and had only come to see the situation. He had thought it would be quite a suitable scenario for Lu Xiaoyu to collect some souls after the battle. The metahuman was dashing frantically towards the small alley with the people from the Heavenly Network hot on his heels, in a formation planning to surround him. Everyone who saw the motionless bodies of the other two criminals all had a line of thought. They all knew how cold and brutal their opponent was. Kill no matter what, a Class D practitioner said calmly. His sword glowed with a bright green light. He bit into his tongue and spat out a glob of blood, Geo. As the blood landed on the sword flew towards the criminal like a shooting star. This practitioner stayed rooted at the spot for a moment. There was an evident cost for using that technique. But he had no choice now, he had to use his special technique to prevent the criminal from getting away. They might be practitioners, but before cultivating their skills, they were educated to protect the country. They were affectionately known as soldiers by the people, and now that these three criminals had committed such a crime, they could not allow them to get away under their watch, for they would be the shame of the people. This move was far from his comfort zone. It was a last-ditch move in the Heavenly Network which might cost his life. Even if he did not suffer any injuries from it, using this move would cause his skills to deteriorate greatly and his vitality foundations would be damaged, making it hard for him to improve in future. This was to sacrifice his future for a technique. The blade soared relentlessly towards the escaping criminal. The green shooting star glowed with vivace, lighting up everything along its way, including the fear in the criminal's eyes when he turned around to see the sword. Most bullets could travel faster than sound. But it was difficult to see the bullet break the speed barrier, as everything happened within the chambers of the gun. As the bullet flies under pressure, it will slow down to below the speed of sound. The surroundings of the bullet will emit great sound as it travels. And at this moment, the green shooting star sliced through the air, with white smoke trailing it. This sword was not as fast as a bullet, but its power was immense. Class D metahumans were described to be able to evade high-tech weapons not because they were faster than bullets, but only because they were too fast for the operators of these weapons to lock their aim and get a good shot. Chapter 100. The green shooting star arrived in front of the criminal in an instant. The criminal only had enough time to prevent the sword from striking his vitals as it struck him heavily. But the Class D metahuman's physique was indeed strong. Although the sword pierced into his left upper chest, it could not go through it completely as it remained stuck in his body. The metahuman was carried by the momentum of the sword and he crashed into a wall behind him, smashing the wall in the process. His physique far exceeded the normal humans as he was still alive even after being struck by such a powerful sword. He was still alive and struggling to get up to continue with his escape. Just then, behind the fallen wall, Lu Shu was exposed in his celestial cloak. If I say I was out for a walk, you guys probably wouldn't believe it, would you? Everyone was rather confused. Why was there a person behind this fallen wall? This guy with celestial strength and aura was obviously a metahuman. Who would believe he was just passing by? Suspicion aroused. The criminal was sandwiched in between Lu Shu and the practitioners of the Heavenly Network, which were, at this point in time, closing in. The criminal let out a roar and wanted to escape from Lu Shu's direction. He had nothing much to consider. He would decimate everything in his way, or he will be the one who will be decimated. Lu Shu was standing in an extremely bad position. Even if he expressed that he wouldn't retaliate, the escaping criminal might worry that he would attack him from the back after he passed by. The escaping criminal had only one choice. Kill. His body started glowing, and a powerful aura was exuded from him. This is bad, he's awakening. Kill on the spot. Seize that suspicious guy. The criminal had already bolted towards Lu Shu, with a fist aimed towards him. Who would have thought that this guy will exude the awakening glow again after having awakened 3 times? If he really awakened, no one knew what would happen. Class C strength-based metahuman? What would that be like? At least they could confirm that the person behind this wall wasn't an accomplice. But in any case, such a suspicious person appearing here had to be brought back. The strength of the criminal was rapidly increasing. The injuries on his body started healing, and the sword in his body remained still like an extension of his body, with the bleeding stopping completely. The men of the Heavenly Network were confused as such a sight greeted them. Strength-typed metahumans always seemed like they could use brute force to overcome anything. The guy over there, he could possibly die. At least amongst them, no one dared to claim that they could withstand such a heavy punch. From the moment the criminal made his move, Lu Shu moved his left foot back half a step to gain a stable footing. He then raised an arm to counter the impending blow. The world was a tough place to be in. Even after training, Lu Shu never expected himself to be in battle under such a murderous predicament. All he ever thought of even if he became strong was where to go and have fun with Lu Xiaoyu. But he had no other choice now. Just like his struggle since leaving the orphanage, just like him selling boiled eggs in a small pot, Lu Shu's life always seemed like he didn't have much of a choice. But his heart always had one mantle. To live on. To live on wholeheartedly. He wasn't an arrogant person. But since he had chosen to come, he had to try his best to resist. Momentarily, his legs resonated with the earth. His waist resonated with his legs. His arms resonated with his waist. And his strength resonated with his arms. This blow from Lu Shu met with the one from the criminal. With a loud "Aka," the violent criminal's arm gave way. The criminal, who was stronger than Lu Shu, actually lost to Lu Shu's blow. This was the technique Li Xianyi imparted to Lu Shu. This was the primary ability and reflex Lu Shu trained hard every day for. From this moment on, even though Lu Shu was a Class E in terms of his celestial map cultivation, his body's physique and strength had already tread onto that of a Class D's. And although the criminal had symptoms of a Class C, he had only recently awakened into a Class D. One of them had proper technique, the other not. The results were evident immediately. At the same time, Corpse Dog emerged from Lu Shu. It sped towards the Heavenly Network with its jade structure shining in the night sky. It wasn't a bright light, but a crimson and bloody shine. The sword did not have any malicious intent. It only drew a large circle to prevent the metahumans from advancing upon Lu Shu. After that, it returned to Lu Shu's celestial map. Lu Shu kicked the criminal towards the group of men from the Heavenly Network and disappeared into the alley. Everyone was stunned as the criminal struggled to even get up, seemingly plotting another escape. His original awakening glow had disappeared, probably from the beating he received. That scene of the flying sword was etched vividly in the men of the heavenly network. Suddenly someone thought, it would have been easy for that flying sword to take this criminal's life. But that guy merely used it to prevent our advancement. Perhaps he was planning to leave right from the start. There was another Class D practitioner in their midst. He also had a last-ditch technique which he did not execute. Not because he did not have the time to, but he did not want to, as he did not want to risk his future by using that move which could damage his vitals. He could not help but think. That guy manipulated his sword with such ease, and he looked nothing like him or his colleagues, who had to put their life on the line to use such a skill. Could he be a Class C practitioner? Even if he really spent all his energy, could he stop that guy from leaving? That move required him to use all his energy, while that guy had already mastered it with such ease. This was probably the difference between Class D and Class C. The criminal eventually died. That green sword which impaled him had taken half his life. Everything that happened after, including his awakening glow, was a cause of his desire to live on. When his awakening failed, it explained that he could not resist the immense blow dealt to him. The battle had ended. The three criminals were dead. But this night had given everyone much to ponder over. And that sudden appearance and disappearance of that person were etched deep in everyone's minds. When did a Class C appear in Luocheng?
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens.